multi-containers using Docker Compose. Okay, here also we'll create a directory. Okay, but in this case we'll also create a Docker file. We'll create our custom image. Okay, and that will run using Docker Compose. So using this Docker file, we'll install Apache. Okay, just installing Apache, nothing else we are doing. Okay, on base image Ubuntu, we are installing Apache. We can directly use Apache container as well, but this is for showing that we can even have our custom Docker file run using Docker Compose. So here, if you see, there are two blocks. One is web, okay, and the other one is DB. So two containers we are running. First one will be DB, okay, and instead of MySQL, we are using MariaDB. It is similar to MySQL, okay. MariaDB is also similar to MySQL. It is open source, okay. So as MySQL is taken over now by Oracle, okay, so people came up with some its alternative, that is MariaDB. The commands are same like MySQL only, okay. So here we are attaching a volume, okay. So we can even attach the volume, okay. So the disk will be used as a volume, disk 0, okay. That is nothing but a bind mount. Yesterday we saw about the bind mount, okay. So it will create a directory on our local host, that is DevOps VM, okay, and it will map inside the container on varlib MySQL, because varlib MySQL contains everything related to MySQL. All the system related files are stored here. If we lose this directory, or if you do not have the backup of this directory, the MySQL will not run, okay. So as this is the important directory, we are keeping it safe in our Docker volume, okay. So MySQL root password we need to provide as an environmental variable. We can also even create a database, okay. So using this command, so I'll have to change this, okay. Database name is not proper, so I'll change the database name when I copy it, okay. And we are mapping port 3306 of the host. In this case, we'll be using the external port as well to connect, that is the port 3306 on the DevOps VM will be mapped to 3306 inside the container, okay. And even for website, we are mapping port 80, okay, on the Docker host to port 80 inside the container, and we are using a volume. The other disk will be used for storing HTML pages, okay. Again, they will be needed in a separate volume, because they are we need it, okay. Even after the container restarts, it should be there. And here if you see, a command is used, build, okay. So it is saying build a image from the Docker file at the current location, okay. That's what it says. And then the same commands, Docker Compose up and all. So let's start the demo. So again, I'll create a directory, multi-containers. So earlier was container, it is containers. S is added, cd, or we can have any other name as well. So we created a directory. Let's create our Docker Compose file. Sorry, a Docker file. So we can also add one more index.html. Okay, here, copy it. Okay, in a www.html or any other location where index page can be seen, but only for demo. I'm not using anything. Just running as it is, the container. Then use Docker Compose. We'll create a Docker Compose file for two containers, web and DB. Docker Compose up -d. So one of the advantage of using Docker Compose is we can write this code once and reuse it multiple times. Okay, so, but before starting it, I'll modify this Docker Compose, and the MySQL database name will give us MyDB11. Sudo docker compose up -d. So the first one, MariaDB image, it is directly pulling it from the Docker Hub. Okay, by default, Docker Hub. Why I always say Docker Hub? Because it is also possible to download it from some other location in some other operating systems like Red Hat and all. It downloads it from. It gives an option to download it from other location, but on Ubuntu it is by default from Docker Hub until and unless we change it. So second, first it downloaded from the Docker Hub. Okay, this MariaDB, and for web server, it started creating the image from Docker Compose. So all the layers you can see it here. Now, if we do Docker Compose PS and even Docker PS, we can see the running containers. Okay. So let's use Docker PS only now. And okay, so it also has the previous containers, okay, from the previous exercise. So what we'll do is we'll just go to multi-container where we had this one, this file, and just do docker compose down. Okay, only down command, and it will just add sudo to it, and it will stop the containers. Okay, and even remove it. Remember, it will not just stop, it will also remove it. Now if I see docker ps, but we need docker ps, it will show the latest one. Okay, so if I do curl localhost, okay, I can see on port 80 itself now, because we have mapped port 80 inside the container to port 80 on this DevOps VM. Okay, so it is working. But let's be in our multi-containers directory. And we have this Docker Compose file. Okay, so here we have defined port 80. Okay, so when we do curl localhost, okay, so actually if you see, it is giving a warning. Okay, it is not properly displaying the page. Okay, so what we have done is, if you see here, okay, it created a volume. Okay, so how to check the volume details? Okay, we'll use this command. But before that, let's connect to MySQL container as well. Okay, so as it is by default, MySQL container runs on port 3306. Okay, so while connecting to it, we are not using the port number. Okay, by default it will connect to 3306, and we'll need a MySQL client. Okay, so I'm just installing MySQL client to connect. So the MySQL is actually installed inside the container. On this host we do not have anything to connect to it, so using this command we install the MySQL client. Now we'll connect. Okay, and the password was, I think, only password. Okay, and we are now connected. We can start working on the databases, show databases and all. Okay, create database MyDB12. So if you see, MyDB11 is already created because it is defined in our Docker Compose. Now curl localhost, okay, should give a proper page. Okay, or if we see its IP address, it is curl this one, and even from outside world it will work. Okay, so because we have mapped port, by default the port 80 is open, right? I don't remember, I think if we opened it or not, but I think it is open in the security group. Okay, so if you see, it is not giving the proper page, it is just giving the some details. It is trying to find index.html, it didn't find it, and it is showing it here. And why it is not showing? Because in a Docker compose file we said that use a volume, okay, to store the content of HTML pages inside var www.html. So let's go inside the Docker container to confirm that it is empty. Okay, so to go inside the container we'll use the command docker exec -it, and yeah, this is the one. Access its bin bash shell. Okay. So whatever we have in var www.html, okay, will be displayed, and as it is empty it was showing that page. Okay, so one of the method would be create here itself index.html, and it will automatically be stored on the volume because the volume directory is mapped to var www.html. So I'll see container HTML page. I'll just save it. Okay, just log out, and if I do now curl localhost, okay, it is showing container HTML page. Until now it was not having any page, so it was not displaying it. But remember, we are now here only for demo purpose. We are using port 80. Generally will not use the port 80 of the DevOps host. Okay, and we need to check where it is, so we can use, means where is the disk 1 and disk 2. So one of the command would be docker inspect. Okay, as it is a Docker container, we'll inspect it to get more details. So if you do docker inspect, okay, let's first do for web server, okay, and try to grep. It is a long file to grep -i vol, okay, volume, or I think we gave the name as disk, right? So let's check with the disk. Okay, so if you see, disk 2 is mapped to var www.html. Okay, and how about disk 1? It is, oh yeah, disk 1 will be showing in the other container id. Okay, so if you see here, this is the location var lib docker, where it is mapped to var www.html. So we'll have to do sudo su. so here we have index.html, the same one which we used. So if I modify it again, just append one more line, host HTML page. So as we added on a host, and if we do now curl localhost, it will show both the lines. Okay, so this is the persistent disk, you can say, though it is a folder. For demo purpose, we'll call it as disk. And again do docker ps and we'll do docker inspect for database as well. This is the container id. Okay, so if you see, this is the varlib mysql volume. I'll have to do grep disk. Okay, so at this location we have our data for mysql as well. Okay, so these are the directories which get created inside varlib mysql. They are also shown in the disk 1 volume. Okay, and these are very sensitive data. If anything get deleted from it, the whole database will go down. Okay, so that's why it is necessary to store it on a volume as a backup, you can say.